In terms of wisdom traditions, this is a wisdom tradition that isn't particularly traditional. And this has been a radical year in my life. And it started in January with this gift of repose, which we talked about here at Sacred Space during the summer. And repose changed everything. And it led me to a realization that I'm sharing with you today that is fairly fresh. And it's been hovering in my life for years, and I think coming to this realization has made a huge difference. And the idea is this, we're looking for, in the future, for some type of spiritual language, something that we all have in common. What can we all celebrate? What can we all revere without distinguishing among beliefs? What can we all agree upon is important and valuable and precious in this life? And the answer to me is life. Is the fact that here we are experiencing life. And so I gave this talk this glorified title of Vitality and Ecstasy, and I'm going to try to deliver on this idea today. And so I'm going to talk about plate tectonics for a moment. So the way in geology, I'm fascinated by volcanoes, and the way it works is that as a plate moves over a hot spot on the Earth, that hot spot delivers the magma up to the surface. It becomes lava and you have a volcanic eruption. I see us alive today as going over a hot spot right now. And the hot spot is the life force that courses through us. And so all of us today are on the hot spot. And we don't know how long we get to be over that hot spot. That's part of what's a precious gift about it. Here we are. And here we are experiencing the joy of being alive, the pure bliss and rapture, presumably, of being alive. And for who knows how much longer. I mean, this might, by the end of this talk, I might be done for.
I hate it when that happens.
I know. Me too. So when I think of life, I think of the body, right? I mean, if we weren't in a body, that's what it is. Life is about being in a body. And the thing about spiritual traditions is, in my view, they've misunderstood the body. So, for example, in Eastern traditions, it's very common that the body is something to be transcended. I heard a talk by a Hindu master who basically called the body a sack of stools. Well, I don't know. That doesn't inspire me, And I recently received a Merry Christmas greeting from SRF, Self-Realization Fellowship, Yogananda's group, that basically said that focus on the temporal body is the source of anxiety and various types of misery in this life. So the worst case scenario is that the body is this troublesome thing that only lasts a few years, it's impermanent, nobody's arguing with that. And that we have to transcend our bodies. A little bit more of an uplifting version is that the body is a temple, right? The body is a temple where the sacred resides. And I go, that's still not going far enough for me, because the sacred is residing as something separate, right? The ghost of the machine, separate from our bodies. Why can't the body be the sacred entity right here? Why can't our bodies be that which is sacred? So now I'm going to make a brief case for the body is sacred. So first of all, consciousness. Whatever that is, we would say, well, something is sacred if it has consciousness, So I would say to you, this is our first interactive exercise of the afternoon. I'm going to ask you to look at your hand. And really observe this hand, okay? And the truth of the matter is, until I did this for the first time in my 20s, I had never really seen my hand. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I've just looked at it, it's been there, but this hand has nerves innervating it. It basically has electrochemical impulses moving through it. It's basically sloughing off skin and producing new cells all the time. It's growing fingernails. It has an intricacy on so many levels of bone and connective tissue and skin. And then move it. Do something to move something in your hand. Now, do you know how you did that? Like, I don't know how I did that. I know that I had an intention to move my hand, and my hand moved, but I really don't know how we went from point A to point B. I have no idea. It's an extraordinary thing, this hand. And if you think about what it can do, the combination of delicacy and strength and agility of this hand, there's no robotic hand that's ever been designed that can even begin to match what our own hands can do. So we're talking about something that, whether or not we say is sacred, is certainly remarkable, and there's certainly a consciousness moving through that hand, because it's not me, my conscious awareness, that is causing the regulation of everything going on, the blood flowing through it, the nerve impulses flowing through it, the new cells being formed, the old cells dying, the whole intricate dance that's happening in this little hand. So, my second reason to think that the human body is sacred is that something is sacred to the extent it's connected to something beyond itself. Right? We have the idea of something is sacred that is connected to the whole. Well, it's very easy to see that the body, we think that there's a clear distinction where our body ends and the surroundings begin. But if you think about that, there's constant inflow and output from this body interacting with the surroundings. We know that the cells of the body, every X amount of time, completely regenerate. So that means that the cells in our body that exist today there aren't there. So the fact that there is a connection, that our bodies are connected to the cycles of the sun and the moon, that indicates something that's connected to a bigger whole. And then the third point I want to make is about something is sacred to the extent that it goes beyond the self, that it's selfless. And you go, wait a second, the body is selfless? I just read in one book that the body's concern are the 4 F's. Feeding, fighting, fleeing, and reproduction. Now, the thing I want to say, focusing on the 4th F, on reproduction. Okay? What are we taught about reproduction in terms of evolution? Right? It's survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest, evolutionary fitness means that you get to the point where you can procreate, where you can pass on your genes, right? So it's not just survival for the sake of survival of the entity, it's survival for the ability to procreate. Well, what does that mean? That means creating the opportunity for more life, creating the opportunity for more beings to experience what we are experiencing. That is selfless. That is an act, it's selfless. We think there's been a misunderstanding of Darwin, and we think that what Darwin was saying was a selfish, everyone for themselves. But that's not what survival of the fittest is. It's about getting to the point of being able to create opportunities for other beings to experience what you're experiencing. Right? Am I wrong about this? So, even now, people have asked, all the evolutionary psychologists, I get to read some of their work every now and then, and, they're arguing about, well, if we're driven by self-centeredness, then why is there altruism? And the premise is, well, there's kin selection, so it's not just about you, it's about your group. And there is truth. I mean, what do all life forms do? We gather in herds, families, herds, communities. I mean, so the whole act of life involves forming connections. Life begets life. The whole purpose of life is, if there is a purpose, the whole thrust of life is to continue and proliferate life. From a spiritual standpoint, the ultimate proliferation of life is to connect with that which cannot and never will die. That's the ultimate proliferation of life. So a year ago, I was in Italy, and while I was there, I had this prayer intention come to me. And it's sort of an act of trust to ask you to do it as a call and response, but I'm going to ask you to trust me that I'm not going to ask you to say something really, really stupid. I'll try not to.
I would say it.
You can wait till the end, and then say it all at once. But you have to memorize it. Okay, so here we go. Here is life, let it fill me.
Here is life, let it fill me.
Let its sweetness flow through me.
Let its sweetness flow through me.
Let it sweep me away and carry me home.
Let it sweep me away and carry me home.
May I come to life.
May I come to life.
May I be in the flow of life.
May I be in the flow of life.
And may I welcome you to come to life with me.
May I welcome you to come to life with me.
Here's life. Here's life right here. And, we've heard about power of now and be here now and all that stuff. And all of that stuff is in this body. Here it is. Here's life. Let it fill me, my body. Let me experience in my body. I've come to the realization that my body does some things way better than my mind does. For example, the other night, I came home and I was hungry. And I didn't know what I was hungry for. That's a signal. I'm hungry, but I don't know what I'm hungry for. That's a difference between what I would call body hunger and mind hunger. I was in mind hunger. My mind was saying, ooh, it would be fun to eat right now. But I wasn't craving anything. When I have body hunger, I go right to my cupboard or refrigerator, right? And I go, I want this. Chocolate.
Yeah.
Or kale. There's fair. And those studies have been done with infants, right? Where the infants are allowed to pick out whatever's put in front of them. They're allowed to pick out whatever foods they want. And invariably they choose a balanced diet. Invariably. Because the mind hasn't overridden the body's fundamental wisdom on those issues. So when I say here is life, be here now, I would say be here now in the body. This body is it. We've degraded it for long enough. Let's put it on the pedestal that it needs to be. Because it's something sacred. It's something that truly is conscious, connected to everything, and selfless. So, what needs to happen to be fully present for me is my mind needs to get out of the way a little bit. Right? Because there is this vitality in all of us. And it seems like it's not in huge supply sometimes. But part of the reason for that is that our minds are depleting that energy on things that serve no purpose or value for us. So judgment, expectation, attachment. And those things invariably lead to stress. You know, I'm a health psychologist, so I spent a lot of my life talking about stress. Which, interestingly enough, the term didn't exist 100 years ago. Did you know that? But stress was invented in America. And I found a book, interestingly, called The Power of Repose. A friend found it and shared the link. And in this book, the woman talked about nervous fatigue. It was 1891. Nervous fatigue, as far as I can tell, the way she described it, is what we call stress. And at the time, there was no other nation on the planet that was familiar with this thing. So they called it, a German physician called it Americanitis. Because as far as they knew, it was just an ailment that existed in America. Now we've done a really fine job of exporting it to the world. So it's probably might be our greatest export as a country. So here are these stressors that are depleting us. And our mental life, we know the mind is sacred. But sometimes the mind doesn't know it's sacred, right? You know? So I'm not putting down the mind. I'm putting down the fact that the mind is depleting us. And in turn, our body, because of stress, is depleting itself. And here's what's happening. And it's happening big. So, stress is a psychological threat that the body interprets as a physical threat, a danger to you. In response to that, the body enacts a defense. The body's defenses cause inflammation. Well, what is inflammation? Inflammation is a flood of white blood cells and nutrients to areas that are potentially injured or about to get injured. If you know you're about to get your butt kicked in a fight, your body will start putting inflammation around your organs. It's trying to cushion the blow. You know, something's going to come in here to try to kill you or injure you severely, and your internal organs are precious. So the body puts a lot of effort into protecting it. Because of toxicity in our environment through environmental pollution, because of toxicity in our diet, because of things that have become inflammatory, and because of the inflammation caused by stress, we have runaway inflammation in our bodies. I think this is very important because if you have a body-based spirituality, the body-based spirituality has to address the fact that there is something severely out of balance. Inflammation is associated now with every single chronic disease that's killing us. Coronary heart disease, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, stroke, high blood pressure. So all of these things are all linked to inflammation in a very obvious way. So what's my point about all this? I mean, my point is that this body-based spirituality involves, first of all, nurturing our bodies. Second of all, stopping the things that are depleting us of vitality. These things are depleting us of vitality. Why should your body and mind work so hard to produce inflammation for things that don't need to be? You know, we don't need to be fighting those battles. And our minds don't need to be fighting battles. The battles that we're fighting in our life right now are probably unimportant in the grand scheme of things. We know that. We know that the issues at work or with bills or whatever will matter very little to anybody in 50 years, maybe 10 years, maybe 10 weeks. And those things are the things that are occupying our energies. If we could bring our vitality back to the center of who we are, if we can bring our life force back to the center of who we are, instead of expending it on the things that matter not, what does that lead to? Well, when I asked Jan, my significant other, she says, bliss, rapture. I say ecstasy. So, I know, semantics, but ecstasy is an important word here. Because ek means out. Stasis means standing. Standing outside of your problems. Standing outside of yourself. Standing outside of all your conceptual ideas is where ecstasy resides. Ecstasy is that fine line between right and wrong. There's this place that isn't right and isn't wrong. I would say that's ecstasy. There's a place that isn't black and isn't white. That's ecstasy. There's a place that isn't good and isn't bad. And I say that ecstasy resides right there. And of course, somebody who's far more articulate than me, Rumi, you probably are familiar with this poem, or at least the first phrase of it. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make sense. So you go outside of the realm of ideas, of concepts, of right and wrong, and this and that, and you and me, and self and other, and blah, 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 in-group and out-group, which is a big topic in America right now. And you get outside of that, you get into what I think is the core reality. And the words that came to me about a week ago is reality is ecstasy. The core reality, when you strip away all the ideas and all the separations and all the conceptual distinctions, that is where ecstasy resides. So if we can bring all of our energies away from the crap that doesn't matter, that makes us small. Makes us small. Because there's a video that I've been doing my best in my Martha Stewart mode, for whatever reason I am, to circulate out into the world. It's an Alan Watts video that talks about this video could wake up the world, and I really believe it's true. And I think the future of spirituality is in that video. And it just says, don't think that this little you who's struggling to get by in the world is who you really are. You've been faked out. It's the nature of human existence. We got faked out. But it's not. Jump off that ship. It's not. We're not aligned with that in any meaningful way. What we are is much grander and much more eternal than we can realize, and it's time to realize it, because that's the only way we're going to get off of this, craziness that our world is in. So, I want to do one last thing before we transition. So I want to do just a couple deep breaths. I know everybody who comes here probably does some kind of deep breath. And as you breathe in, I want you to draw in all that energy that has gone to things that don't matter. Just draw it back into your core, into the center of your being, into the center of your body. And let it build this beautiful energy, radiance, this vitality. And now, when you're at that center, when you breathe out, radiate that out. Because vitality is to be shared. Life begets life. So we breathe in, draw that vital energy into your core of who you are. Let it bring you into that place, reminder of who you really are. And as you breathe out, let that vitality radiate out. Vitality isn't just to be kept and hoarded. And when we get to the center of who we are, we have vitality to spare. Because we're tapped into the source, that magma hotspot. We're not just the surface volcano, we're the core source of the magma. So,
how do we get the body to lead the mind? Because that's really what we're talking about. The mind is, I've heard the term, standing on a whale, fishing for minnows. We're standing on the whale of an infinite consciousness, fishing for the little stupid things that we're fishing for. That's what the mind is doing. So we have to draw the attention back to the whale. And how do we do it? Well, let me give you a little clue about how I would like to propose. There's many, many ways. It looks something like this. We have found with repose that you do this 3 times a day. You just lie on your back like that, 3 times a day for 7 minutes. It takes the stress out of your body. It has all kinds of health benefits. And I'll tell you this, those are great, but screw it. That's not what I care about repose. The reason I care about repose is because it puts me at the source of vitality. It's the source of my creativity. It's the source of my life force. And everything has come my way. Every blessing that I could ever imagine this year has been handed to me on a platter because of this. It's so simple. It's like, boy, this is brain dead stupid. Exactly. You don't have to work at this. You don't have to focus on a meditation where your mind has to shut down or has to do this or can't do that. You just lie like this. That's all it is. So, whoever's comfortable lying like that on this particular floor is welcome to. If not, you can just sit in silence and while this beautiful music is going to play that Greg's going to show us.